Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and with me as always is the hostess with the mostest, Marlene Engel, aka The Hotness. Hi, babe.
Hi. I'm actually wondering how many of your viewers have no idea where the hostess with the mostest came from.
Where did you think it came from?
It's some old commercial or TV show, right?
Probably, yeah.
You don't know either?
I don't necessarily.
Well, thank you, I guess, but it's good to be here with you. And I'm just going to bust in and talk about how this is an odd time of year for us.
Yeah.
And it can be a hard time of year. And that is because it's an anniversary, and we tend to think of anniversaries as being celebrations of something. But they're not always a celebration.
Not always a celebration. So by the time that you are watching this episode will drop on a Monday, as usual. But this Monday that it's going to drop also happens to be the 30-year anniversary of the trauma that took my sight, laid me up for a good long while, and ultimately started my path on this life's journey that's probably the reason that you and I met in the first place. So even though I love my life and my life is wonderful, it's also still kind of a tough time of year when hard anniversaries like this roll around. I think about, usually we want to celebrate anniversaries. I don't celebrate this, right? And it wouldn't make sense to celebrate this. So how do we then still acknowledge these really tough days? And everybody's got some tough days, anniversary days in their past, right? It could be the date that a grandparent died or a parent died. The day that the divorce papers were finally signed, the day that my dog died, right? Those are the kind of dates, those anniversary dates that stick in our memory. And at least for me, leading up to those anniversary dates is a little bit more of a difficult time of year. Would you say that?
I would say that, and as the spouse or the loved one, it's also hard to know how to respond, how to be there for you, what to say, what to do, what not to do. And I know you mentioned a lot of things, but you have to live with the consequence of your anniversary. But so do other people who lost a loved one, lost a child, lost something, got some horrific news, that they still live with the consequence of that. And it may be something different. It probably is something different. But the people around them, it's hard to know what to do and what to say and how to support you through a hard day like this.
Yeah, and not just the day of. And I think that's where I was kind of going at earlier, that you said this is a hard time of year for us. And I don't think I notice it nearly as much as you do, but you say that I get weird around this time of year, which is
I'm sure that's comforting. That's the right thing to say, yeah.
And I'm reminded of being, I don't know, I'm probably fourth or fifth grade, and I happened to be there when my sister got her ears pierced for the first time. And I remember as the piercing gun is coming up to her ear, she's held up and she's scared and tight, and then it's done, and it was like the anticipation was so much worse than the pain itself. I kind of think about that with anniversary days, that the days leading up to them you're kind of worried, you're kind of concerned, you're like, I know that date is coming, I know that terrible date is coming, and so I feel like the anticipation sometimes is more difficult than the actual day. Why is the day any different than any other day? Why is the day?
Why is the day? I'm going to tell you, I think there are days that you specifically, even if you're living with the consequence of something, that you need to honor an event. So you don't spend your life every day mourning something.
I don't spend every day of my life mourning or grieving the fact that
Or kicking and screaming
kicking and
about.
screaming, yeah, or BMW sessions.
No, you don't. But having a day where you honor that this huge event happened and
how do you
changed life
actually do
forever.
that though? What does honoring the day actually mean? And at least for me, it means letting it be and allowing myself to feel whatever I want to feel, right? Because I've got this reputation as the guy who, you know, goes through really, really difficult situations and I don't want to say makes it look easy, but I teach other people how they can go through situations too. Doesn't mean it's always easy, right?
No.
That'd be unrealistic. It doesn't mean it's always easy. But I do always want to stay forward facing, right? Stay forward facing. Tom Petty's got a line in one of his songs where he says, "You can look back, but it's best not to stare."
Oh, I love that.
I do too, yeah.
And I know some people, and I would put you in this category in a different way. Some people have taken that event that happened to them and turned it into something positive for other people and turned it into a way to give back to someone else. And that's how they find some peace and consolation. Because again, there's some times we don't ever get to get away from the consequence. You always have that loved one that's gone. You can't get that back. But what can you do so that maybe another one can't be gone, or so that their memory isn't forgotten, you know, of something like that? How do you feel? You just said you don't feel a lot of angst coming into the day. I do, because I worry about you and I love you. And I always, trauma, when it gets ripped open again and can't heal because it's always there, you still have to deal with certain events, and it can reopen and shove you right back into that moment. And that would be a very, very normal response. And I know that it happens to some of you guys because I know too many people. And I know that it happens and you're struggling with this happened to me and I'm living with it and I hate it and I want that day to change and go back and take it back. Tell me about Mark at the 1 year anniversary, Mark at the 10-year anniversary, Mark at the 30-year anniversary. What has changed over time?
I hope I've gotten more patient. I know at the 1 year anniversary, I was still in a lot of physical recovery. I could not eat solid food at that time, and I was still waiting to. What?
I'm sorry. It's just unimaginable that a year later you still
couldn't eat solid food. Yeah. So I was still going through some of the physical recovery, but I so wanted to be back at college. I just got to get back to school. And so I was hurt and I was trying to acknowledge that time, but I didn't know what I was doing. I remember being in the hospital and at the 1 month mark, even making a comment about, well, it's been a month, and then it's been half a year, and then it's been a year. And how is it different from year 1 to year 10 or now to year 30? For one thing, I'm not even sure at 18 years old I could have ever comprehended what being 30 years old was like, much less being 30 years down the road from 18. I think that's one of maybe the benefits of youth that you don't quite understand yet. But whenever I think back on what a gift the last 30 years have been, not always easy, but always a gift, that it helps me honor the day and recognize how far I've come. And I think that when you can honor and recognize and acknowledge both the good and the bad, honestly, that's what life is, isn't it? It's recognizing the good and the bad. It's dealing with the valleys and peaks as they come, And, I think now at 30 years, hopefully I have a little more patience. I think I'm also, maybe for the first time in 30 years, really truly getting some of the help that I should have gotten 30 years ago. And that's through different methods of counseling, different techniques, and always accepting the fact that I'm never going to be 100% like I was before, right? That's just not possible. I'm not that person anymore. But what can we do to be the best version of ourselves? And for me, that comes from taking a good long look at the present, acknowledging how far I've come, and then also taking a good long look at the past and not being afraid of it, not being torn up over it, but hopefully having some objectivity whenever I look at the past.
I love that. I think that's very helpful. And I know you, because your physical injury stretched so long, it still blows my mind, so long that you set a goal quickly, very quickly, and that was to get back to school. Mm-hmm. And for 2 years, I think you kept, in my perspective, who wasn't there, I wasn't there at the time, but you put a goal in and you went full throttle toward that goal and maybe didn't process some of the trauma at that time.
Yeah, definitely true.
And you just barreled through, and it's that, I'm going to say, stubbornness and that Midwestern value that I appreciate, because I think it saved your life, and it certainly gave you a life. But sometimes when we don't deal with traumas when they happen,
they sneak back up on you later.
Yes, the boxes start melting and the yuck starts oozing out. And I want to encourage you, if you are in a position where you are dealing with a fresh trauma or a recent trauma or any trauma that hasn't been processed, go ahead and get some therapy, get some help. There's nothing embarrassing or shameful about saying, hey, this terrible thing or this very hurtful thing. You don't have to decide on a scale of if your hurt equals Mark's hurt.
Yeah.
Your hurt needs addressing and tending to and love and ministry by someone. So don't be afraid to reach out for counseling. And
there's help out there, and again, please know that our hearts are with you if you're celebrating a 1-year anniversary of something tragic, or if it's a 30-year or 50-year anniversary. Please know that our hearts are with you, and if there's anything that we can do for you, please know that we're always here to help.
And we are always so, if I say I'm proud of you, I know I take it for granted sometimes that you go through life so well and beautifully. But anytime we stop and think, I think we're all in a little awe of what you have done and what you are doing. And I think that goes through anyone who's suffered and turned that suffering into a way to help other people. I think it's a beautiful thing. And
those are my favorite kind of people.
Mine too.
I don't like perfect people who have never been touched by tragedy. I like people that still have residue and grit on them from being tested by fire. Those are the kind of people that I want to spend my time around and learn from. So
yeah,
be that kind of person. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So.
Well, thank you all so much for indulging us in a little bit of a walk down memory lane back to that night 30 years ago that changed me forever, and that probably put you and I in the same path now many years later. So thank you for being part of my present, and thank you for being part of my future. Thank you, babe, for being part of my past, present, and future.
And forever. You're stuck with me.
And forever. All the October 9ths that ever come. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you. All right. And thank you all so much for being with us for this episode of Compassion and Courage. This, again, is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. please reach out to marcusengel.com if there is anything I can do for you. Compassion training, keynote speaking programs, hospital consulting, all there at marcusengel.com. We'll see you next time.